Sometimes we find ourselves in relationships that drain us of everything we have to give. It feels like being trapped in a sealed capsule with only a limited supply of air, each breath a small act of survival. While the intensity of such experiences varies, abusive relationships, be they physical, emotional, or sexual, are some of the most devastating. In these spaces, you may feel as though your emotions, desires, and even your well-being have been hijacked, handed over to someone whose needs and wants take precedence over your own. Slowly, you start to compromise not just on preferences, but on values and boundaries that once felt immovable. But how does this even happen? How do people move from loving, balanced relationships to ones that leave them feeling empty? Or worse, why do some repeatedly find themselves in the same painful cycles? On the surface, it might seem like an overeagerness to please, to maintain harmony, to make things work at any cost. Dig a little deeper, though, and it often points to the idea that the other person is somehow better, that they fulfill something within you that you believe you cannot provide for yourself. This creates a quiet, gnawing fear. If you don't keep them happy, they'll leave, and their departure will confirm your worst fear, that you weren't enough to begin with. This fear isn't always conscious, but it shapes behaviors in profound ways. Over time, you begin to surrender your power bit by bit, each compromise feeling small in the moment, but adding up to a dynamic where they hold the lion's share of control. Psychological theory suggests this dynamic isn't entirely about one person being inherently cruel or manipulative. Often, it's a dangerous mix of one partner's deep need to fix something within themselves and another's inability or unwillingness to recognize the damage being done. And for many, the roots of this behavior stretch back to childhood. A chaotic upbringing, an emotionally absent caregiver, or unresolved early experiences can lead to patterns that echo into adulthood. People who habitually give away their power often carry unresolved insecurities from their formative years. Negative experiences, whether it's criticism, neglect, or a lack of emotional support, create a kind of internal narrative. This narrative drives them to seek out situations that recreate those early wounds, almost as if they're trying to rewrite history. The mind clings to the belief that this time, it can finally get the love, attention, or validation that was missing back then. But the reality is, chasing external validation, whether from a partner, a friend, or anyone else, inevitably leads to diminishing self-worth. When the focus shifts entirely to making someone else happy, your own goals, dreams, and even your sense of identity take a back seat. This isn't always immediate. It can creep in slowly, as you prioritize their ambitions over your own or seek their approval above all else. Over time, this erodes your independence, leaving you emotionally reliant on a partner who might not even be aware of or equipped to handle the depth of that dependency. One of the starkest warning signs of this imbalance is the breakdown of personal boundaries. Behaviors that once seemed unacceptable, like excessive partying, dismissiveness, or even subtle flirtations with others, are tolerated in the name of preserving the relationship. Each time you overlook a boundary, it chips away at your self-respect, leading to a kind of internal dissonance that can feel impossible to untangle. The real challenge comes when you realize just how much of yourself has been given away. By then, it might feel like it's too late to walk away. Too much effort, emotion, and time have already been invested. But the hard truth is this: reclaiming your power often comes at the cost of conflict. If your partner isn't willing to meet you halfway, the only real option may be to leave. The first step in reclaiming that power starts with looking inward. Take a hard, honest look at where and why you gave it away. What emotions were you trying to protect? What needs were you hoping the other person would fulfill? When you identify these moments, you can start the process of healing and setting boundaries that will protect you in the future. Unfortunately, not every partner is receptive to change. Some thrive on control and manipulation, feeding off the energy and compliance of others. These energy vampires often use tactics like gaslighting, guilt-tripping, and emotional manipulation to maintain dominance. If you've ever been in a situation where you're questioning your own sanity, it's worth asking whether someone else's influence might be distorting your perspective. Trusted friends or family members can often spot manipulation more clearly than you can from within. Rebuilding your sense of self-worth isn't easy, but it's essential. Surround yourself with people who uplift and support you. Engage in activities that remind you of your value, not because someone else acknowledges it, but because you see it for yourself. And most importantly, establish and communicate your boundaries clearly. When you do this, something remarkable happens. Partners who cannot respect those boundaries will reveal themselves through their actions, making it easier for you to walk away when necessary. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, compromise, and balance. No one person should wield more power than the other. If that balance tips too far in one direction, it's worth asking yourself what's at stake. Are you holding on out of love or fear? And if it's fear, what would it take to let go of that, once and for all? The answers aren't always easy, but they're necessary. Because in the end, the greatest act of love you can show for yourself and others is to stand firmly in your own power.